Hey guys, what's up? Schhlaw. Welcoming you to another episode of Walks. Witchah. No, I'm just saying that because that's what came up on the transcript. Schhlaw. That's a new one. You know, at first it was schlah, but now it's Schlah. Schlah. So we're just, letting the transcription thing figure out what we're saying. Pretty cool. Anyways, my conditions, my throat's kind of getting scratchy, which is not good, but then again, I have been talking a lot, obviously doing the walks witchlah. I know, it's like, what's the point of me transcribing it if I'm just going to be like fooling around making jokes to the transcription machine, and then it's not even really that funny because you won't see the transcription machine. You know, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is. Sorry, I forgot to start my workout on my Apple Watch. So, anyways, yeah, I think that's it for my symptoms. Just the throat and the voice. I think everything else has gotten better, except it is getting to be towards the end of the day, so a little more fatigue has set in, but like I said, still feeling so much better than yesterday, so pretty grateful for that. Not really too sure what else I've been thinking about. Oh, there's me just doing that thing again. I don't know why I always end up just saying that. What I've been thinking about, I guess, it's missing. It's my mind. It's missing my mind. What I was thinking about. Something to do with something. I guess just wealth. Something about wealth, probably. I don't know. Well, my apologies. I guess there isn't a lot on my mind right now that I'd like to talk about. I am pretty happy to have the week almost over. It'll be a little bit easier next week, I think. And that's nice. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Why am I so silent? I guess it happens sometimes. I guess the time for walk which thought crept up on me. Because again, time was just moving by so quickly. Didn't really notice it. But that's okay. Well, and also my throat thing, like, you can probably really tell by the sound. I mean, you have been able to all day, but probably should have taken a break. But like I said, nothing beats talking for me. So my throat could be, there could be blood from a result of me talking. I mean, it could be excruciating pain, and I'd still probably talk through it. I'm just able to do that. It's pretty crazy. I just can't get enough of talking. Well, let's just try to rewind and think about what we were talking about earlier. Trying to describe the difference with, people who... Trying to think. People just not being able to comprehend what is or isn't valid as an opinion or a fact, and how I was connecting it to still believing in objective truth, but not anecdotally, not perspective based, and I guess I wanted to know if there was a specific word for that. I'm not sure. I wonder why it feels like I feel the way I do. Maybe it's fine, there isn't really much documentation of my earlier life, you know? I feel like my earlier life theories and just thoughts that I had really were not particularly noteworthy. I mean, some of it was probably cutting edge for my age. Maybe, if anything, I was probably more impressive back then. Because I know for a while I ended up just throwing it all away and just trying to either assimilate or just do whatever, because I felt like it wasn't working. The whole being super disciplined thing, I mean, it really wasn't making me happier. I don't know. Isn't that weird? I think it's kind of weird. I think maybe it's just, since I was raised a certain way, I didn't really like the rigidity of trying to do everything perfect. And it's also quite frustrating because nobody else wants to walk with you on that journey. So it's kind of like, why should I be bearing the burden of everybody else, essentially, when other people aren't trying? But then again, I mean, I don't know that it's other people not trying. I mean, how much of it is behavior inherent to human nature and out of an individual's control, and then how much is justified? Does that make sense? I think it does. How much of it is justified? How much can a person actually change, and how much is within a reasonable limit of human potential and human competence? I think these are going to be some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves as a society as we get further and further into the future, and expectations presumably get higher and higher. Although we are kind of at a weird spot, you know? We are at a pretty weird spot right now. It feels like while expectations are higher than ever, simultaneously they're lower than ever. We're basically taught or told to be inadequate. I feel like at jobs, and of course I can't speak for everyone, the material work, the expectation is lower. At least it seems that way at my job, where actually doing a good job doesn't really seem to matter. It would matter more if you can do a faster job. In my limited experience observing people at fast food restaurants, it seems pretty similar. They just seem very lazy. Doesn't really matter how they act or work. And I mean, a lot of this has to do with the pay and how low it is, and how, you know, there's not really hope for a lot of these people, so why would they do? I mean, same with me, really. I think the only reason I could have hope is because I don't have to pay rent, so I at least have a good life for now. But I mean, that could change extremely quickly. You know, life is quite unpredictable, which is why I think I'm stressing more than I really should, you know? Because the truth is, I should probably be enjoying life. I really should. That's how I should be thinking. That's how I should be operating. I should be enjoying life. But I've never been able to do that because of my comprehension of life's unpredictableness. I don't even know. I wonder if it's something a lot of people don't even think about. Isn't that kind of interesting? Probably they don't. There's probably a lot of people that just react to things as they happen to them and don't think about the future. Maybe that explains why we're at where we're at. Because when it comes to the way people voted, and when it comes to the way people behaved, whether it's how they raised their children, they didn't really have an accurate or good plan for the future. They didn't have an accurate or good comprehension of the future. And so I think it shows. It shows at this point. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. It really shows. And that's what human nature did. They abused the system and changed it to make it the way it is now. And now it's been trashed for the future. So young people really have a lot of work. I mean, we have to probably work just about twice as hard, twice as long as our forefathers, while they kick back and have retirement and pensions. None of them ever really thinking about the system level consequences of their actions. I know we've brought this up a lot, but I'd really like to think if I was alive in the past I would have thought about it, but maybe I wouldn't have. Because I've mentioned before the Golden Age and how, you know, everybody in the Golden Age was just kind of in another world, basically. A world of pleasure, a world where you didn't really have to appeal to much logic or anything like that. It was just, you just kind of could do whatever you wanted. We really saw the end of that, right? So that's really where we're coming from. We're coming from a time where people had a choice. Do I want to have another kid, or do I want to have a BMW? Do I want to have a kid, or do I want to be able to go on this vacation every year? And enough people in that generation started making decisions like that, and it messed up the future generations. In addition, we started taxing the wealthy less and less over time. And that has led to, I think, overall worse economic conditions. Although, like I said, I assume there's some kind of elitist strategy with it. But I really honestly don't know. Because again, I've said before, I'm fine with soft-core elitism or like merit or credit-based elitism, but I begin to disagree when it's just like, oh, you know, somebody's a billionaire, but like, you know, are they doing anything good with the $1 billion? Mainly in regards to science or technology, furthering the human race. So that's at least what I hope. I hope that's what their intention is, and it's not just some kind of selfishness, but I kind of assume it is. Although the reason why it may not be is just because there's obvious things like fast food. It just shouldn't exist. It costs a lot of money, and somebody ends up being rich off of it, and they're just doing a huge net negative on society. So I'm not really sure if that should be elite. You know, the person who runs all the fast food, the CEOs of those companies should probably, again, just, I think in the future that's what AI would immediately do. It would just shut all this stuff down and say that this isn't conducive to anything. Because that's the thing I always kind of think about with society, is you have these so many things that exist that don't need to exist. They're not good, or they're very extra and inefficient. I guess this may be a darker, colder side of me, but you get into things like a flower shop. Fairly expensive, probably wasteful, because there's probably a certain percentage of flowers that go bad. But a lot of people like it. A lot of people might like that whole thing. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. But to me, it never made any sense. Now, could that be because I'm a man and maybe in a woman's eyes it could be different? I'm not really sure. Maybe generally speaking that's true, but I think there's probably plenty of women as well who would also think it's a little bit silly. There's a lot of extra things that technically don't need to exist within the economy. And I'm not sure if that example is super relevant to my comparison, so I'm going to... mainly when it comes to these service jobs, like these waiters and waitresses tip kind of things, hotel maids, all these things, like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just rich people paying poor people usually barely enough to even get by. And how is that a good formula? Like, why should some people get to live that lavishly and then other people don't? And other people are like barely getting by, whereas other people just come in and get to have these lavish meals and wear lavish clothing, all because of the probability they were born into and just kind of random happen chance. It seems weird to me. Like, I guess I'm the only person that really thinks about this, but in the past things were much more accessible, and that was really the main draw to a lot of this stuff, is you could actually afford it. It was affordable to the broad population. Nowadays, going to a restaurant is very soon to be a privilege, something that a majority of society just won't be able to afford to do. And you'll see a lot of these buildings close down, and the world will, I don't know, probably correlate with my vision that I'm talking about. The sad truth is we see eating out in restaurants as an amazing, fun venture, but what humans fail to see is the detrimental waste that comes as a result of it. You know, in a perfect system, humans would have pre-planned food, and it would be a perfect amount, so there's no food waste. Even food stores are really wasteful. And I mean, how does this work? Why are we here? I guess it's because in the wilderness you didn't have to really plan all that much. Like, you did, I guess you would have to have some food on hand, for example, because if you didn't have any food on hand, it would just, I mean, you could die, right? And you had to do some planning, but honestly, most of your life, I don't even think you really had to look ahead or plan for anything. It was mostly just about, am I going to get enough food? Am I going to get enough food for tomorrow? You know what I mean? That basically was life. I think that's very interesting to think about. And so now we've been animals thrust into a system where future planning is paramount, and understanding all these complicated numbers and systems and statistics is the most important trait. Knowing which candidates to vote for, really scrutinizing people in these advanced ways. And most humans just don't bother. They can't really think of that because they're still very stuck in whatever is right in front of them in the present moment, because that's been how we've been conditioned to survive. Isn't that interesting? And that's probably why we're in the predicament that we're in, and why now my words fall on deaf ears, but as things begin to collapse, people are going to realize it's not about what you can do for your country. It's about what your country can do for you. I know that statement sounds great, that saying by JFK, but it's flawed. And I remember when I first heard it, well, I might have heard it before, but I was 12 years old in school. There was some project where people had to put quotes from their favorite president. And I remember reading that and really thinking, wow, like that's such a good quote. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And it really, like, at the time I thought it was great. But now I realize that just doesn't make any sense at all. That actually leads to a ton of problems. Like huge problems. Because at the end of the day, most of the consequential actions, they come as a result of your country, your society at large. What we do as individuals is really a drop in the bucket. You know, what you can do for your country is fairly small, especially if your country doesn't function properly. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to think about. I think so, at least. And I don't know. I just think, yeah, I mean, that quote really is wrong, because you can't even do anything for your country if your country's set up improperly. And that quotation, it's sort of, again, it makes it seem like things are just people's fault. It's not the politicians' fault or other people who are out of people's control. So that whole era of individualism, it seemed like a good thing, but I guess people just didn't realize that it had pretty substantial consequences. And we still see the negative implications of those consequences to this day. It's been schlaw, but now it's time to buy schlaw. So, see you, schlaw.